Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the webcast today on BIM Collaborate Pro for BIM Managers. My name is Justin, and I am the AEC Tech Consulting Lead here at VinZero. Today, we'll be going over how Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro connects extended and siloed design stakeholders and allows BIM managers to control access to varying design management tools from a centralized location in the cloud. This webinar will cover topics such as project setup in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, Revit cloud work sharing, and design package workflows between different consultants, management of clash detection process within BIM Collaborate Pro. There will be a short Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to jump in with some questions at that stage. Before we get into the main topics, just a brief overview of what VinZero is and does. We are a solutions organization that fosters innovation through delivering software and hardware solutions, consulting, training, development, and managed services. We have become a trusted advisor to our clients due to the breadth and depth of our service offering and technical expertise, our commercial agility, and understanding of customer service. We have an excellent ANZ footprint with offices in large parts of Australia and New Zealand. We are one of the largest Autodesk partners in the world and considered by businesses we deal with to be a trusted advisor. We offer services such as data management, BIM implementation, consulting services, CAD management services, on-site and online training, and customized content creation. The majority of VinZero A2K staff are from the industry, so we understand the challenges our clients face, and therefore we can deliver solutions through a combination of experience and innovation. A little bit about me. My name is Jatin Sharma. I have over 7 years experience in the AEC industry as a BIM manager, designer, and technical instructor. Currently, my role at VinZero is that of an AEC Tech Consulting Lead, and my software skills include AutoCAD, Revit, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, Navisworks, Format, 3ds Max, and Assemble. I actually also have a Bachelor of Science in Geology and Physics as a double major, and I'm also a Revit certified professional and Autodesk Build certified as well. Okay, now that the intros are done, we can get into the meat of the webinar. Here's a quick agenda we can reference. So first, we'll get a bit of an introduction to what the Autodesk Construction Cloud is and how that connects to BIM Collaborate Pro. From there, we can dive into some of the features within BIM Collaborate Pro before going into a live demo of how to set up a project in the ACC environment, how to initiate Revit cloud work sharing, how to utilize what we call design package workflows between different consultants, and managing the clash detection process in the cloud. Finally, we can finish up with a Q&A session at the end. Okay, first up, what is the Autodesk Construction Cloud? The Autodesk Construction Cloud is an evolution of what used to be called the BIM 360 platform, and we can describe it as a unified platform that connects workflows, teams, and data at every stage of construction to reduce risk, maximize efficiency, and increase profits. We can see a graphic here which broadly separates each stage of the construction lifecycle and what capabilities the Autodesk Construction Cloud Common Data Platform can provide at any said stage. So today, we're going to be talking about BIM Collaborate Pro, which fits into the design stage of the construction lifecycle. So BIM Collaborate Pro is the name of the license you buy in order to have access to the capabilities which facilitate design authoring and design collaboration within the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. Okay, the Autodesk Construction Cloud is the common data platform, and BIM Collaborate Pro is the name of the license that you buy. Okay, so if we start talking about design collaboration and authoring, I want to touch on how design collaboration has been evolving, particularly as it pertains to Revit workflows. So initially, we started off with having Revit central models in our company shared drives, and users would just tap into that central model and work away. So they'd have one shared drive, the Revit central model was in that shared drive, and you'd have user 1, 2, and 3 tapping into that localized central model. The problem with that was the limited amount of collaboration you had if you couldn't actually be in the office, or if you had to work with external consultants on bigger projects because you couldn't invite them into your shared drives, right? Not only that, you had your daily manual BIM management tasks that could be automated if you had more of a collaborative platform. And there was also no internal activity tracking. You couldn't see what anyone was up to, and you didn't know when changes were happening in real time. But then there was an evolution of what we call the Revit servers, where users could connect to a server within an organization that hosted Revit central models. So for larger organizations, this extended to multiple different services across regions. So if you had a company that had different offices in different parts of Australia, you probably might have a different server for each office. This actually resulted in new problems such as very expensive hardware, slow data exchange to and from the server, and particularly actually if you used VPN and used the VPN workflows, sometimes that workflow would end up corrupting the Revit model, and sometimes the work that you had been doing doesn't actually get saved to the common Revit model. The idea here is that BIM Collaborate Pro eliminates all of those pain points. So the Revit central model is in the cloud on AWS servers, so there's no need to worry about hardware. It's within the common data environment, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, with the ability to set up controlled permissions so that you can safely and effectively work on projects with external consultants, with no manual download and upload process, because everyone's working in that one platform. And of course, you can actually start to automate some BIM-related tasks such as clash detection, and have extensive tools for project management and delivery. This is actually the main reason why currently it's the recommended solution for design, authoring, and collaboration, and we're seeing a lot of companies migrate towards the solution. And here's an extra slide for any of you who are around in the older days. There was a product available called BIM 360 Design, okay, part of the BIM 360 portfolio of products. So this product, BIM 360 Design, actually allowed you to access the BIM 360 environment and use modules such as Revit Cloud Work Sharing, Collaboration for Civil 3D and Plant 3D, and BIM 360 Docs. So this new product, the Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro, is its successor, and it sits in the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. So this new environment provides extra functionality such as clash detection, insight, and what we call Autodesk Docs now instead of BIM 360 Docs. Please bear in mind, this is a unified platform, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, which means that your older BIM 360 projects and your new Autodesk Construction Cloud projects all sit in the same place, so it's nice and easy. I will show a visual example of this in the demo section of this webinar so that it makes a little bit more sense. So again, just to summarize, BIM Collaborate Pro is the evolution to the older BIM 360 design and sits on the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform, which gives it additional functionality. Also, if you have AEC collections, you actually now have access to Autodesk Docs within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So if you have AEC collections, you can actually access the cloud environment, at least from a document management standpoint. Okay, just one more visual representation of what we're talking about, and it gives you a really good idea of what type of licensing you should have depending on you and your team's role. So, basically, if you're a designer who's part of the design authoring process, then you need BIM Collaborate Pro. If you're just someone who's a reviewer, then perhaps the Autodesk BIM Collaborate license or Autodesk Docs will suit you just fine. Regardless, they're all connected within the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. We have done webinars in the last couple months around BIM Collaborate, Autodesk Docs, and all the functionality within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It's on YouTube, so you can check it out anytime. So coming back into BIM Collaborate Pro, if we put all the features of BIM Collaborate Pro together in place, it looks like the slide here, right? So you can think of each square here as modules within the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. And what modules you can have access to is dependent on the license that you have, right? So for BIM Collaborate Pro, you have access to all of these modules, right? So you've got access to Docs, Revit Cloud Work Sharing, Design Collaboration, and Model Coordination, which is live clash detection in the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. Okay, just a quick overview of Revit Cloud Work Sharing aspect within BIM Collaborate Pro. Again, we'll go over this in a bit more detail in the live demo, but at a high level, the Revit models are synced to the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. From there, files are packaged and shared with other design teams. So this actually includes both your models and your sheets, depending on what you need to share. Those other design teams can then view the contents of the shared data and then optionally consume it into their own design workflow. So this process ensures that the design files remain on the platform without needing to be constantly downloaded and uploaded. It is the responsibility of the BIM manager to oversee this process and ensure that it gets set up correctly. Okay, but obviously design coordination is not the only aspect that BIM managers need to monitor. There's a project timeline available, which keeps everyone on the same page as the design changes throughout the course of the project. There are timeline symbols, which indicate when packages are being created from a design team and if they have been consumed by your design team. You can also review changes between model versions if necessary. Again, we'll go over this in a bit more detail in our demo environment. And just so everyone's aware, there are collaboration options available for Civil 3D and Plant 3D within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It's not just for Revit. We have done a webinar on how Civil 3D integrates with the Autodesk Construction Cloud and how that work sharing aspect comes together. So again, you can go on YouTube and check that out if you're interested in learning more, or get in touch with us at the end of this webinar. Okay, lastly, just issue management is a key component to continuous collaboration. There's no need to wait for the next coordination meeting to assign issues to project members. You can easily tag clashes as issues, assign them to the appropriate stakeholder for resolution, and input a start and due date. You can even see these issues directly in Revit now, and that's a new feature that was released late last year and continuing to be developed this year. Okay, cool. So now we can get into a live demonstration. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up my Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. So again, you can just use a web browser. This is a splash page for the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And over here, you can see a list of all the different projects that I have access to. So if you're an account admin, you'll have access to the Create Project button and also the Account Administration button over here. If you're not an account admin, you'll need to either get in touch with your reseller or Autodesk to make sure that it's all set up correctly for you. Okay, so from here, the first thing that we want to do when we set up a project in the Autodesk Construction Cloud is click on the Create Project over here on the left-hand side. And from here, we can enter our project name. So I might say ABC for BIM Managers. Let's say that's the project name. You can give it a project number and select the account of where this project needs to be hosted. So for me, it's going to be A2K Technologies. That's the hub that I want this project to be hosted in. And then you would go ahead and say, yep, what project type? And you can select from any one of these options. It doesn't really matter too much, but for us right now, we can just say multi-family housing. There's an important element here called template. So one of the things you should do as a BIM manager, and something that we recommend that you get in touch with us about, is creating what we call a project template within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. What that means is, as we go through today's webinar, you'll notice that there are quite a lot of folders, subfolders, permissions, and the way that you set up the whole environment. It's very, very important. And so you can actually standardize it across your business by creating what we call this project template. So the next time anyone creates a new project within your hub, all the folders, subfolders, permissions, they all get automatically set up. So you're not having to start from scratch every time you create a new project. So if you're unsure of how to get started, I would recommend that you get in touch with us. And so from here, we can enter an address, time zone. All that is optional. The only things that are very important are the ones in the red asterisks. And so once we're done, we can go ahead and click on Create Project, and it'll go ahead and go through the project creation process. Okay, so a couple things to note here, right? The first thing that happens is that you, as the person who's created this project, gets added on. And so again, it should be BIM managers that are creating these new projects for the teams to then move forward. And when you create this project, on this upper left-hand side is where you pick the different modules which are available for you, and nothing's set up yet, and we'll go through that in just a second. But if we click on our name, okay, if we click on our name here, we can see on the right-hand side, there's something called assigned products and permissions. So one of the first things that you have to do is you actually have to turn on the modules that you want this project to use within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Now, I've got access to everything because I'm part of the reseller network. But if you, for example, bought a license of BIM Collaborate Pro, the things that would be accessible for you would be Autodesk Docs, Design Collaboration, and Model Coordination. Okay, so we can turn on those modules. So we can turn on Docs, and when we hit the slider, we'll say Docs is now turned on. So Autodesk Docs is the document management side of Autodesk Construction Cloud. Then we can turn on Design Collaboration, okay, which is package workflows, etc., and Model Coordination, which is live clash detection in the cloud. So when we turn on these modules, if we go over to this left-hand side, now if I click on this picker, they will become available. Okay, it's a very common support question we get. Oh, I've created a new project, but I can't actually access anything. Why can't I access anything? It's because you haven't turned on your products and permissions. Okay, but once you've turned them on, you actually have it available for you. So another recommendation that we say is the first thing that you should be doing is going into Autodesk Docs, which is the document management side of the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Oh, I may have accidentally, let me just jump back into this project. There we go. Into the Docs environment. So when you initially set up the project, obviously we've got no folders and subfolders here. And so as the BIM manager, you have to start setting up your project according to the standards that you've articulated, typically in like a BIM implementation plan or a BIM execution plan for a particular project. And so what that looks like, I've got a project, a live project that's happening at the moment in my sandbox environment. And this is what it would look like once it's a little bit more developed. So the folders and subfolders that are here have been created using the typical ISO 19650 standards. And they have these container folders for different departments and disciplines that are working inside of this project. Okay, so if we take a closer look, perhaps at my work in progress folder, I've got different disciplines, right? So I've got architecture, services, mechanical, structure, and civil. And so the idea is that they have their own folders and they work away in that folder until they're ready to share, okay, until they're ready to share with the other consultants, and they will then be able to see those changes and bring them into their Revit model. And the way that I control that as a BIM manager is that if you click on these three little dots, you can set up these controlled permissions that we were talking about. Okay, so for example, under this work in progress folder, I've got architecture, and the only people that can access this folder is the architect, okay, who has edit level permissions, and the BIM manager and the project admins. If we were to take the services container folder, for example, we can see that it's just the BIM manager and the building services engineer. Okay, so everyone has their own folder and they only have to worry about that folder that they work in. That's the beauty behind this platform, is that there's a lot of processes that happen in the background to facilitate for this. Okay, so once you set up your docs environment to a particular level that you're happy with, the next thing to do is to take a Revit model and put it into this cloud environment. So I might use architecture as a quick example. So if I go into the architecture folder, I've actually got a Revit model here. And so how do we set one up and put it into the cloud environment? So the first thing that you do, obviously, is if I go to my Revit platform, I've actually got an example project here, but we'll use a new one from scratch so that you can understand what the process looks like. And just a quick note, I would recommend that you download a particular app called the Autodesk Desktop Connector, okay? If you download the Autodesk Desktop Connector, it actually links the desktop environment to the cloud environment. And what it lets you do is that if I click on the home button in my Revit, I can actually utilize the plugin called Autodesk Docs. So I can actually access the project and open up the model if I wanted to straight from my Revit environment, okay, without needing to do any manual upload and download process. That's the benefit of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, right? So again, the app is called the Autodesk Desktop Connector. Okay, so we've set up our folders and we've got a Revit model. So how do we put this into the cloud? So if I start up a new project, so go new project, new Revit project, I'll just use the architectural template. And let's say I'll draw some walls, and maybe I'll draw a floor if I wanted to as well. Okay, I've got a floor and a couple of walls. So let's say this is my project and I want to bring this into the cloud environment. Well, how do I do that? So the first thing you have to do is what I would recommend, save a local copy into your drive, first of all. So you just go to the save button and just save this project into your local desktop environment. From there, you would go up here to the Collaborate tab, and then you have an option on the left-hand side called Collaborate. Now, if you want to, at this point, you can also check your publish settings so that you do have something to work with from a publishing standpoint. If you're not sure of what publishing means or what publish setting means, we can go through that in more detail. Training, you can get in touch with us. But the idea is you're choosing what things you actually want to publish into the cloud environment other than just a model. So if you want to be publishing views, if you want to be publishing the 3D view or a sheet, you can do so under this publish settings here. Okay, so I might just choose a couple and I'll just go save and close. Once you've checked your publish settings and you've got that up and running, the next thing to do is to click on this collaborate button at the top here. Okay, then it says, hey, you haven't saved the model. It's okay, we can quickly save it. And then it gives you a little prompt. And it says, hey, you're about to enable collaboration. This will allow multiple people to work on the same Revit model at the same time. How would you like to collaborate? Like I say, in the past, it used to be within your network. So collaborating in a local server or a local shared drive. But now, if you buy BIM Collaborate Pro, you've got the option to set up this Revit model in the cloud. Okay, so from here, we can say, okay, yep, I want to put it into the cloud environment. And then it says, okay, great. If you want to save it into the cloud environment, it's going to give me a prompt in a couple seconds to say, well, what project are you referring to? And so from there, all we would do, so I'm just going to change account to my A2K Technologies account. And you can see here, it's gone to my project and I can go project files. I'm actually changed to the demo project so that you can see the list of all of the folders. So all the folders that you're seeing here are the folders that you're seeing in the cloud environment as well. Again, make sure you download the Autodesk Desktop connector so that this is all replicated nice and easily. So from there, you would just select the folder. So for us, it would be work in progress under architecture, maybe under Revit model, and we would go ahead and save that and set that up. Okay, so that's the first thing that you have to do, which is creating the Revit Central model in this cloud environment. Okay, now what some users do by accident is that they will go ahead and they will maybe, they're going to open up their, Windows Explorer, for example, and just do a simple drag and drop. So they might, I've got a pool house model here. I might just do a drag and drop and put it straight into the cloud environment. Okay, which is fine in the sense that you can see it here, but watch what happens if I try to open it up back in Revit. So it's just going to process that. Cool. And once it's processed, this is all fine. This is all cool. But if I go back into my Revit and I use the home button and I go into like work in progress architecture Revit model, it's not here. If I refresh it, just in case maybe it hasn't synced properly, etc., it's going to do a big refresh and it won't show. Okay, so this is another typical support question we get. Hey, I've set up the Revit Central model in the cloud. I've done everything correctly, but I can't see, but none of the other users can see the model. Why is that? That's because someone's done a drag and drop and they haven't actually gone through the process that I've just described. Okay, so that's what you'll have to do as the BIM manager, set up your, just going to delete this very quickly. You can go ahead and delete. So this is how you set up the Revit model appropriately in the cloud. Once you've set it up appropriately, then as your teams are working on it and they say, hey, we're ready to share it with the other consultants, that's when we move over to design collaboration and go through that package workflow that we were talking about earlier. Okay, so what we're going to do is, so far we have created our Revit Central model. It's over here. And now it's going to get replicated in design collaboration for us to then share with the other consultants. So I'm going to go up to design collaboration. I'm just going to have docs over here on the side as well, just in case if we need it. So I'm part of the architecture team, okay? And this is the list of the models and information that I have that I can share. There's a couple things to note here. The first thing is you notice that it says preliminary and coordination. It doesn't have like the name of a model. So where is this coming from, right? So this is actually coming from, if I go to the, I'll just get rid of that for now. If I go to my published settings of my LTU architectural model, that's my one set, which is coordination, which is just one view. And I've got a preliminary set as well, which has got around, quite a few different number of sheets. So because these published settings are appropriate and I've set this up, remember from the beginning that those names are being replicated back in here. And they're saying, well, in the preliminary set, there's about 40 sheets, and in the coordination set, there's a couple of 3D views. Okay, so again, this is where we talk about how you can have this optimized so that you're only sharing what you want to share with your other consultants. You don't have to share the entire model. Okay. If I click on these three little dots at the top, we can actually see that project timeline. So there's different symbols here, which indicate when the other disciplines have been sharing, consuming, and working on the model. If you want more information about what these different timeline symbols mean, get in touch with us at the end. We'll be more than happy to go through it with you. So from here, I'm part of the architecture team, and I want to share I want to share the information I want to share with, let's say, the structure team or the services team or any other discipline. I would click on this little plus icon here, okay? And when I click on this icon, it's going to give me a quick preview of my model, okay? And I can choose what I actually want to share, whether it's a set, whether it's the entire model, or whether it's any additional documentation. So I might choose a particular set. Yep, I want to choose the preliminary set, and I can actually save this as a package for the other teams to review and link into their own Revit environment. So what would typically happen is here, like I say, you would select what you want, hit the save button, and when you're happy with that, it's gonna, oh, actually that's a duplicate package. Maybe we'll try something else, but either way, you would go ahead and you would share that package. So once you share the package, it will become available for the other disciplines to review. When you share this package as well, a copy of that file actually gets placed under the shared folder over here. So under the discipline folder, there will be a copy of that file. Okay. And what some people do is that they'll go into the shared and they will link whatever model is here under the shared folder, okay, back in the Revit environment. That's not the best workflow. And the reason why is because if it's linked this way, you're actually not utilizing the platform to its fullest capabilities, because whatever changes the other disciplines are making, yes, you'll be able to see it right away. However, one of the really powerful functionalities within design collaboration is actually being able to compare the different times people are sharing their packages. So let's say I was part of the structure team, okay? And I know for a fact that architecture have tried to share a package on this date, okay? I can actually use this compare button. Actually, I might choose this one here, which is a Revit model, okay? Because I haven't linked my model with shared under this shared folder here, I can actually click on this compare button and actually visualize the changes between the latest version. So you can see here, there's no difference between the last time they shared and the newest times they shared their model. But if we look at perhaps version 3, there's actually 7,000 changes, right? but we wouldn't be able to recognize all of this before bringing it into our own Revit environment and potentially corrupting our model if we didn't utilize this functionality. So now we can actually see, if we go to show changes, we can actually go ahead and visualize what actually are the changes between the last time the architecture team has shared and this time. Okay, so you can take a look at what's been added, what's been deleted, what's been modified, and where those modifications have occurred. And there's another cool feature called Watch Changes, where you can actually pick what parts of the model that you're interested in, and it will only tell you if there's been a change to those parts of the model under Watch Changes. So for example, I might only be interested in walls and floors, and it's only going to show me those changes if there was a change that occurred. Okay. So this is a very, very powerful tool. So once you take a look at that package and you're happy with everything, you can use the consume button over here. And then when you use this consume button, what happens is a copy of this model that's currently in shared gets put back into your own container folder under consumed. And that is what you use to link in your Revit environment. So as an example of this, let's say that the services team have shared a model, right? And I've consumed it. So a copy of this LTU services ends up in my own architecture consumed environment under services. And there's a copy of that Revit model here. And that is what I use to link into my own Revit environment. So when the change happens and I'm happy with that change and I consume it, bring it into my own environment, then my Revit model will automatically update. Okay. And again, you can just use the insert manage links, link Revit for that. The idea is you're just grabbing the model from the cloud rather than a shared drive. Like I see here, I've got LTU services that's been linked from the cloud environment. Okay. Okay, so that's a quick overview of design collaboration, moving models throughout the system. That's why it's very, very important that you set up these folders and subfolders appropriately. So from there, once you have design collaboration set up and it's all working fine, what you can do is that you can set up what we call a coordination space. Okay, so what a coordination space is you can say, okay, Autodesk Construction Cloud, I want you to go into any particular folder and I want you to conduct live clash detection for all the different models that are being uploaded into that folder. We would recommend that you choose something like shared or published, because that's where models are automatically being copied across so that the live clash detection happens as soon as someone updates something. Okay, so to access that feature, you would go up to the top here, the docs, and you would go into model coordination. Okay, so that's the live clash detection within the cloud environment. Okay, so it's going to go ahead. And so we have a federated coordination space, which is essentially going into, if I can go to docs, so I can show you the folder it's going to. It's going into this O2 shared area, grabbing all the different models, and we can actually conduct live clash detection. It's giving us a quick overview on this right-hand side here. There's another quick overview under clashes. So if I click on clashes, it's going to go ahead and show all the different clashes between the different models. Now, again, as a BIM manager, one of the things you'll have to do is it'll be really good for you to set up what we call views, okay, for your different project teams and members so that they're not scrolling through all these different issues, right? They might only be interested in clash detection for particular models, okay? And so how you set up particular views is you go up here into models. Let's say that I'm interested in the architectural model clashing with the fire services, and I can pick those two. I can say open in viewer. And it's now going to go ahead and show me the automated clash detection results. Okay, so this is the view here. I can hit save view so that I can save it so that it's accessible again and again. And if I want to take a look at the clashes, I can click on the clash button. And it's now going to go ahead and give me all the different clashes which are currently happening. Okay, I can group it by multiple different ways. By object is what it is by default, but you've got multiple different ways that you can group the different clashes. You can now go through this clash detection process either within a range, above a value, and below a value. And you can do it in inches and millimeters as well. If you want to take a closer look at any of these clashes, like for example, I might want to take a look at this assembled stair, I can see that there's a clash that's happening over here. Okay. Similarly, I might say, oh, what's happening with this basic wall? And I can take a look at that visualization here. Okay. And if I ever wanted to access this again, obviously I'd save that view. So in here under my views, I've got it available. But the key thing here is that you can make it available to everyone within your team and not just yourself. Okay. So this is how you can make it easier for everyone that's on board. So if we go Arc and Services, it's going to go into that particular view. Okay. And then they can just go into the clashes. From here, you can select the different clash issues that you want to assign to the different project teams. Like, let's say, for example, I want to have all these stair issues. I want to create an issue and assign it to perhaps the architectural team. So I might go create issue, place a pin for where I want them to take a look at, and it's going to go ahead and create that issue for me. Okay, once that issue has been created, we can give it a title. We can change the type of issue it is. By default, it'll come through as a clash issue because obviously we're doing it from model coordination. We can give it a description. Then we can say who it's going to be assigned to, whether it's a user, whether it's a role, whether it's a company, whatever it might be, whoever needs to look at it and solve the issue at hand. And you can give it a due date and a start date as well. One of the new features at the moment that's just come out in the November release is being able to create what we call issue templates. So this area here, descriptions and due dates, et cetera, if what you can do is you can create issue templates. So when you're creating an issue, you can choose the template and all of this will be pre-populated for you so that you're not having to rewrite descriptions over and over and over again. Okay. And it gives us an activity log as well of when the issue was created, who's assigned to it, who's working on it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And one of the things you can also do within this platform is actually create some automated reports so that all these different issues that you're creating, you can send out weekly reports to the different companies or the different disciplines that you're involved with and say, hey, these are a list of issues that are still left outstanding. And you can even link it to BIM coordination meetings. So you can actually conduct BIM coordination meetings within this platform. So you can create a meeting, assign issues to people or disciplines, and create follow-ups as well. Okay. And as you go through the project, and at any point, you want to upgrade from Revit, currently right now, let's say the project is in Revit 2021, and you want to upgrade to Revit 2022, for example, but you don't want to manually go through that process, you can do that in the cloud as well. So you can go up here into settings, and there's an option called Revit Cloud Model Upgrade. where it will go through and find what version the Revit models are currently in. And then it will say, hey, there's Revit 2022 available or Revit 2023 available now as well. So you can see here currently all the models are in Revit 2022, and you can actually upgrade it to Revit 2023. What I would recommend is that you do a test upgrade first to make sure that there's no issues, and then you can go ahead and actually upgrade it within the cloud platform itself so that you're not having to do it manually. Okay, there's also some new features available under the account admin area for shared parameters under library, which we'll get to at another webinar next year, as well as conduct some training sessions so you can create some shared parameters that will link between the cloud environment to your Revit environment so that everyone's working off the same shared parameters and other templates as well. Okay, so jumping back, I've actually got some resources available that you can reference. So I've got a quick guide, BIM Collaborate Pro guide, and I've also got a quick guide on timeline symbols if you want some more information. Okay, so now we'll get into some questions. I think they are quite a few questions here. So I'll go through each one. When did A2K be bought by VinZero? Yeah, Tracy, that's an offline question. I'm happy to provide more information on that. We'll be having an announcement soon on that. To confirm, BIM Collaborate Pro replaces BIM 360 and evolution of the software? Yes, 100% correct. That's exactly what it is. So all the new features that are coming on board are being put into the Autodesk Construction Cloud, aka BIM Collaborate Pro in this discussion. So you don't really need to worry about BIM 360. Autodesk will still support existing BIM 360 projects, but as far as you're concerned, moving forward, it's BIM Collaborate Pro. Another question here, can I get a recording of this webinar? Yep, absolutely. It will be on YouTube. I've done another webinar called Revit and BIM Collaborate Pro, which goes over similar things. And you can reference that on YouTube as well. And you can just grab a link. So it's an old VinZero channel. Why would updating a link with lots of changes? Yeah, this is a really good question by Mitch. So why would updating a link with lots of changes potentially corrupt your model? Is it the amount of information being processed or only an issue if families are hosted to the link model? It's a bit of both. So if I go back to my project and I go over to Docs, so if I go over this workflow again very quickly, so teams are initially working away in their container folders, right? And there'll be a point where they'll want to share what they're working on with the other consultants. So what they'll do is, like I said, they'll go into design collaboration and they'll share a copy of what they want to share, which ends up in the shared area here. Now, as we're all people, and sometimes people make mistakes, right? The problem with you linking their model from the shared area is that if they make a mistake, you don't have a buffer to correct them or to stop this mistake from having issues in your model. So yes, it could be things like corrupt families. It could be things like they're not following typical Revit Central Model protocol in terms of housekeeping, making sure that errors are down. There could be a whole heap of different reasons, right? And so by having that buffer, it means that you're not corrupting your own model by having the changes they're making automatically be updated. You've got that ability to see what they're wanting to share with you under the, so if we go to design collaboration, if we go to like any one of the timeline symbols, like for example, architecture, I've shared a package on this date. I can see once it pops up, I'll be able to see what that is. And if I'm not happy with it, I've got the chance to go back to them and create an issue for them as well, right? Let's say I view this architecture model, and I'm like, oh, hang on, something's not quite right. Right. So I can go back to them and say, hey, something's not quite right. You need to make some changes. And therefore I'm preventing that from affecting my own model. Okay. That's the main reason. Once we've got another question. Once a model is consumed from a consultant, can it be purged or audited to reduce its file size? It can, but I would recommend that the external consultant is the one that does it before they share. Everyone should be following good housekeeping rules around Revit central models and compacting the central model. Yes, you can do it on your side as well, but it's always better if the external consultant does it first rather than after the fact. Next, is the sync button still a necessary step? Couldn't it be replaced by a publish button only? Yeah, that's more of a question for Autodesk. That's the way that it's been set up. From my perspective, one of the biggest reasons why it's been put in there is that if you have multiple different users, right, that are all syncing to the central model with all the little changes they're making, if they all had their different publish settings and their own changes they're constantly publishing to the cloud, it can become quite complicated. So I think this is a more streamlined way of working. And that's the reason why there's a separate sync to central where, people are working on it, they want to sync to central. And then there's a separate publish method where it's being formally put into the cloud environment. So we no longer say we are working on BIM 360, but on the Autodesk Construction Cloud. That's correct. Yeah. Do the reports look / present better than the Navisworks type? Yeah, actually 100%. If you do want more information on that, Dion, feel free to get in touch after the webinar. We can go through the workflow in a little bit more detailed. We've got lots of questions here. I think we've only got a couple more minutes, so I'll just go through a couple more of these questions. If we click consume, the updated model will not be refreshed. How can we enforce the consume? It should. When you hit the consume button, the model will be refreshed if you follow the appropriate steps. Laura, again, feel free to get in touch after the webinar. We can go through and make sure that you set it up correctly within the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. Is the issue of version for the first model uploading in ACC has been solved? For example, in BIM 360, when you upload the model, it shows V2 in the version. So this is a common misconception, and this is, and I will answer this. So it will still show version 2 in the Autodesk Construction Cloud as well. And the reason why it says V2 is because it does the process of syncing and publishing as well as the uploading all at once. So when it does the first upload, it's version 1, and then it will do the sync and publish, which will make it version 2. If we look, if you ever see a Revit model that says version 1, that actually means that they haven't set it up correctly and put it into the cloud environment appropriately. And you have that error where you can't see it in your Revit environment, like I couldn't earlier with that pool project. So that's the reason why it says V2, and it should show V2. Instead of manual publish, any automation workflow can be created? Yep, absolutely. Really good question, Laura. So instead of a manual publish, you can, under design collaboration, if I bring this up, there's something called a schedule publish that you can use. Okay, so let's just bring that up now. So I actually have it set up automatically for structure, where weekly on every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, there's an automatic publish. So the way that you would set that up is that there's something called a schedule publish, and then you can have that be automated. So that every Wednesday or every Thursday, or your whatever day at whatever time, it can be automatically published into the design collaboration environment. This is another really good question. So the model coordination is actually an online version tool of Navisworks / Revit. So for clash detection, does it mean that the Navisworks management will no longer be needed? Yep, 100%. So the model coordination is meant to be live clash detection in the cloud. It's meant to be Navisworks in the cloud, basically. If you find that there are a couple things you really like about Navisworks more than you like about model coordination for whatever reason, you can also sync between Navisworks and model coordination as well, so that you can actually create issues between them and assign clash issues. So there is a workflow around that. So you don't need to choose either or if you're, I don't know, very, very fond of Navisworks, for example, and you want to, still move forward with that, but incorporate model coordination when required. Here's another quick question. When we create new project types, or can we create new project types or update existing default project types? No, as far as I'm aware, currently you can't. However, those project types aren't as important as you may believe them to be. It's mostly for Autodesk reporting purposes, as well as some metrics in the Insight tab, which I'm happy to talk you through after the webinar. But other than that, there's no other consequence to choosing a different project type. We've got another one here from Michael. When publishing large models, it can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 1.5 hours. Is there any way to speed up the process? Yep, 100%, Michael. What I recommend is that when you have your models that big, what you should do is you should utilize the schedule publish. So if you know for a fact that, let's say, for example, in a typical BIM execution plan, you're required that you're publishing every Wednesday, right? So if that's the case, what you can do is you can create a schedule publish for like the day before on Tuesday at, I don't know, like 1 a.m. or something if you wanted to. You can choose whatever day and whatever time. And so what happens is the cloud environment automatically in the background will go through that entire publishing process and be ready for you the next day. So if you're like, hey, it takes a long time during work, well, you can automate it so that it's happening outside of the typical work hours. Okay. That's all the time we have today for questions. If you have more questions, feel free to get in touch with us after the webinar. I'm just going to put through our email address, info@a2ktechnologies.com.au. If you reference this webinar, it'll come straight to me, and I'm happy to sit down and answer all of your questions. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Hopefully I'll catch you on the next round of webinars. Have a good rest of the year. Happy Christmas, all of that. And let me know if you need anything else.